All right, thank you, everyone. Some of you know me, some of you don't. So for the ones that don't, my name is Simmer Baines. So we have Tom Johnson speaking today. He'll go over the benefits of cover cropping and why it's beneficial, and a little bit. He'll go more into depth of what cover crop does for you in your orchards or vineyards.
Okay. Good afternoon. Thank you for coming out. Like I said, my name's Tom Johnson.
Hold it closer.
My name's Tom Johnson, and I work for Camprass Seed Company, which is a wholesale seed company based in Manteca. So we do almost exclusively cover crop, some irrigated pasture, and some range improvement materials as well. A lot of those are very interchangeable materials, so that's why we're in that. I'm wearing a DeKalb hat because we used to do DeKalb, but we don't anymore. So what I wanted to do was introduce cover cropping. They told me it was pretty much everybody was kind of a beginner at this up here, so we'll start with the basics on that. And a little history is cover cropping is not new. Prior to World War II, this is how Grandpa got his fertility. Once they discovered fertilizer in a bag, all bets have been off. My grandfather made a fortune in the Green Revolution, but still cover cropped. So some things die hard. The biggest benefit to a cover crop is to your soil. Soil fertility, water infiltration, organic matter, soil microbial activity, which we didn't start to understand until recently, and now we're going, oh, that's why that works that way. Okay, cool. So soil improvement, erosion control, that's basically the conservation district's game, is to cut down on soil erosion. If we cover the soil, the raindrops hitting the soil don't splash the dirt up into the water that now runs off your field. If you have a cover crop out there, it slows down how fast that water moves across, and root action usually increases water infiltration by up to 150%. First thing most people notice is, hey, the water didn't run off my field when it rained all that time. Wow. Next year he doesn't plant it again and the water all runs off his field. The soil-water interactions, like I said, infiltration, and that actually was developed, that data was developed locally in the Yuba-Sutter area by the USDA, so they're not supposed to lie. We are hearing a lot about soil carbon and increasing soil carbon, and that's going to be tough in California, and it's going to be tough to make enough difference in soil carbon, in my opinion, to make it worth trying to get a marketing device or money out of it. But increasing that organic matter out there does make your fertilizer work better, makes your soil hold water better, and generally it's going to make your trees better. So that's one of the reasons to work on that. And we're going to make more plant matter to turn into the soil or decay on the soil surface with a planted cover crop than we will with most weed natural vegetation ones. And we're head and shoulders above just clean, bare soil out there. So soil protection, soil improvement's usually the biggest thing that people will say first about putting a cover crop in, but then there's a whole bunch of other benefits out there as well. Secondary benefits. If we did it right and established it early enough and had the right variety of mustard out here, there'd be flowers for the bees that are coming next week prior to your trees having bees needing them. A beekeeper always brings your bees a little early, and then they sit around and don't have anything to eat. So putting some flowers out there would be very helpful. A lot of times it's kind of a trick getting them to match, but it can be done. Other insects, insect pollinators, and so on and so forth, your IPM goals. having that cover crop out there, or letting that residue stand a while longer, is going to be housing for a lot of your green lacewings and a lot of your early predators and beneficial insects like that. Leaving structure out there lets them mature, so you can have them out there versus having to either bring them in or continue spraying on a real regular basis. You can through using a cover crop affect your weed structure out there. How many weeds of what you got out there, what you don't have out there. You can suppress some. You can't stop all of them, but you can suppress some. And partly that's because now there's competition with the weed for sunlight and water and everything else. The other one is okay, you're going to mow it at just the right time, and you're going to knock that seed bank back a little bit, which is what you're doing with weed suppression technology, working on it. One of the things a lot of people will ask about is the climate effect of having a cover crop out there. The Almond Board measured in a frost about 3 years ago that there was 0 difference in air temperature at 3 feet above a cover crop than there was at 3 feet above bare soil during a freeze. So it's not necessarily the old wives' tale that, yeah, you got a cover crop out there and says, well, everything's going to die. And the other thing is we will point out that it's a tool. If you know you're in a spot where you're always going to have a frost issue, you can either plant every other row, or you could go out there and mow it earlier than anticipated. You won't make as much organic matter, but on the other hand, you still protected the soil during a lot of that wet weather and so on and so forth. The other thing about if you left it laying on the surface as long as you can, you got cooler soil in the summertime. It's going to slow down a little bit of that evaporation out there. It's also going to have happier roots. So those are kind of the main reasons. I play a lot of these, and everybody has a different reason for wanting to do it. 30, 40 people here, there'll probably be 15 reasons of why they either don't want to do it, or, well, can I do this with it? So we can do a lot of things with a lot of different products. So I'm going to go through my 20-year-old thing here. So then we go from, okay, selecting your cover crop. What kind of cover crop am I going to use? So I usually play 20 questions with people at a trade show. They say, oh, I'll plant a cover crop. And I go, well, okay, where are you at? How much rain do you get? And what are you growing? Et cetera, et cetera. So it's not necessarily in order, but it's pretty close. I mean, the goals and expectations most people had was nitrogen production. It's not the same as putting fertilizer on, but you can produce some extra nitrogen in your soil fertility. Erosion control, USDA, NRCS will say that's their number one reason for doing it. Everybody in the Midwest is in the same boat, basically. There's a lot of information on the internet from the Midwest. Just remember that it rains there in the summertime and it snows in the wintertime, and doesn't do either of those here very much. Increasing your soil organic matter. If you grow a nice big bushy cover crop and then disc it in and disc it 4 or 5 times and hit it with a rototiller, you're probably not going to make a big difference. But if you disc it or turn it in only enough basically to control it enough that you can live with, over time you will start to build up some organic matter in that soil. A little bit more than you had already. In California, when I went to school, 0.5% was high in California in organic matter. We live in a desert, so it never had a whole lot of organic matter in the soil in the first place, so that's probably why we're at where we're at. Increasing the water infiltration, we hammered on that a lot. You have the roots going down in there. You cut the top off the plant, the roots die back. That's almost a direct channel from the soil surface down into the soil. And some of these grasses will root to 6 feet deep in a season. Field access, that obviously is not as big a deal this year as it could be, but if it had rained any at all in January, he wouldn't have been putting gyp on yesterday. He would not have been able to drive in this field without leaving ruts. And at this stage, we got the floor of this orchard about where we want it. We don't want to make ruts because then we will be back to disking it and doing a whole lot of groundwork. And I know from experience this heavy clay soil up here, it takes a lot of horsepower to turn it from clods back into a fine smooth bed. Increase in biodiversity, probably most growers, it's not high on their list of things that they worry about unless they have a very avant-garde IPM thinking pest control advisor telling them, hey, you need to have more stuff out there to raise more stuff. But it does make a difference. Aesthetics, again, not a big deal, but it can be, depending on where you're at. We can put flowers in these things sometimes, and you'll have flowers out there. Well, to my eye, just having green stuff out there versus brown, dead dirt between your trees is a lot prettier than not.
Start.
Okay, back to selecting bee considerations. Your crop, your cultivar, your rootstock, your age. This was kind of written more for grape guys than anything else, but on the other hand, these things do come into play. Crop, okay, we're in almonds. Cultivar, independence. Rootstock, fairly aggressive. Going into bearing. Those decisions are something I want to listen to when you're asking what cover crop you want to plant. Soil type, soil depth, pH, fertility. Fertility and pH are not as big a deal in a general biomass cover crop than they would be with, say, clovers or something like that. Topography, flat with a little slope, so we're not too worried about it. But if you're a grape guy in the coast range and you're going up and down hills, it makes a big difference. Climate, average rainfall, when it starts, when it stops, that type of thing. Your cultural practices. Are you switching over to, hey, I just want to mow this. I don't want to have to disc it up anymore. I'm going to go to lower tillage or no tillage. Or I'm going to continue disking it. Irrigation method. Micro sprinklers don't reach very far out here. So they're not going to be much help to start something, but on the other hand, it's better than drip only. The one thing I usually say is, and 90% probably of orchards and everything else anymore are drip irrigated, is you have to consider your cover crop as a dryland crop. It's going to live on what rainfall falls out of the sky. Pest history, weeds, rodents, nematodes, disease pressures. One of the other ones Brent might talk a little bit about is available equipment. In other words, what do you have to plant it with, and what do you have to manage it? So then we're okay. We've gone through my decision tree, my 20 questions, and answered most of them and kind of dialed it in a little bit. So then we go, okay, you got 3 basic cover crops. A plow down or a biomass to be turned into the soil for the most part. The perennials or sod systems, I'm not going to touch on that a whole lot. Works and prunes real well up here. High water table, high water holding capacity soils, solid set irrigation. Not going to work too good in almonds because you can't get the almonds out of the grass. Reseeding annuals are one that we would look at a little bit harder in situations where we're converting over to lower tillage or no tillage, and we're not planning on disking in anymore. So anyways, biomass or plow down mixes. Small grains, large seeded legumes, usually a mixture. Brassicas, I include them in here because they make a whole lot of biomass, which would be radishes and mustards. A lot of times those are in here either for the forage, for the pollinators, or they're in here to increase our water infiltration rate. They do bring something to the table, but they don't always have to have it all the time. Management, you're going to plant at fairly high rates. Could be established a little later in the fall. The idea is maximize the growth, and that's going to depend on your tolerance to how much is out there. And then you mow it, chop it up, disc it in if you're after the fertility out of it. If you're just looking for trying to smother weeds or whatever, you can just leave it laying on the surface. It will decompose. Usually dries up enough that, yeah, you hit it with a mower in August, and you're not going to have enough residue to worry about at harvest. Why this one usually is it's easiest to increase your organic matter. It's also one of the easier ones to establish. And nitrogen production, cycling, water infiltration, usually if you pick the right materials, does a better job on that. Mostly it's up front because it's the easiest one to start with. Like I said, the perennial ones, I'm not going to get into that a whole lot. They have very specific places where it works, and there's other places where I've seen it done and it just really failed. And then the receding cover crop type would usually be kind of short and hard to find this time of year. It takes off and starts to grow in February into March and April, blooms in April and March and May, attractive to bugs and what have you. Hardy annual legumes like rose clover, crimson clover, subterraneans, medics, burr clovers, things like that. Get it in as early as you can so that it gets all the rainfall, gets established where the soil's still kind of warm. You can usually go out and mow it about now or during bloom, and you clip the winter weeds off, and then the clovers are all down there not getting hit, and they say, oh boy, now I got sunlight I can take off and grow, and they will. But then after that gets to be the tricky part, because then you got to let it flower and turn brown before you mow it again, and your neighbors all laugh at you. So sometimes that's, I've seen people disc it up because somebody said, well, it doesn't look good. So that's the aesthetics part. So I don't know how thick your skin might be on that. It is all dead once it turns brown in May. So it's not competing for water. You may see fairy rings out there where the micro sprinklers hit some of the seeding. Biggest trick with it is trying to get it to reseed. And my last one here, I think is a recap. Actually, it's one of my favorite things to have to hammer on a little bit. It's timing. This was planted in early October, so it got the rain in October, so it came up and grew real well. If it had been planted in November, it'd probably be about half as big and more weeds and everything else type of thing. So if you're planning on this thing, you sit down at the kitchen table in July before harvest and say, okay, well, we're going to try a cover crop on the 40. So you start talking to people about what do I plant, when do I plant, I'm going to plant it. And so that's your planning process. I've seen it done the day of harvest, but it's nicer to have kind of a plan in place. So things that go in that is, okay, what's your harvest finish date, or approximately? What are your vacation plans? I usually tell people plant your cover crop, then go elk hunting. Don't go elk hunting and come home on the 1st of December and want to plant your cover crop. It works, but it doesn't work as well most of the time. And then you need to know, okay, what are my post-harvest operations for a seed bed preparation? Can I make a seed bed? Or am I going to have to wait for it to rain a little bit to loosen the ground up enough just to get a no-till drill in the ground? What's my irrigation post-harvest? Am I going to prune? How am I going to remove my brush? Am I going to push it out? Am I going to shred it? Am I just not going to prune anymore? Then it's like, okay, well, if I want to do that, then maybe I need to throw the brush in one row and plant the other row so I don't have to do that. You can shred this stuff over. You can shred brush over most of this stuff and not hurt it usually if you're doing it prior to about now. And then, okay, the equipment, line that up. Am I going to plant it with a broadcaster, or am I going to borrow somebody's grain drill, or what am I going to do? And then finding your seed, who you're going to get it from, and what you want to put out there type of thing. So I'm going to turn this over to Brent and have him kind of go through a little bit of what he did out here this year on this, and then we got a couple other ones to go.
Hello, my name is Brent Houston, Wilbur Ellis in Yuba-Sutter here. Hello. There you go. So we planted October 1st, Jack did, with a no-till Great Plains, 11 foot, 100 pounds an acre, and it was a blend of 35% bell beans, 15% peas, 15% common vetch, and 35% triticale.
Questions or?
Anybody have a question for Tom or me?
Question. Are you gonna disc this in the rototill, or what are you gonna do?
grower here. What's the best time to do it, though?
The best. I always like to wait till the last minute to mow it. Jag has done, like over here in this peach block, he pruned. It was cover crop. He's mowed it, and it went down fine. This was cover crop as well. He's dissed it, so you kind of get to see all three right here.
For nitrogen, for to get the best use of nitrogen, what's the best time you think?
Usually, with this type of thing, what you want to do is you want to maximize your biome. I can holler, I think. You want to get it, let it get as big as you can stand it.
Right.
So sometimes people go, okay, this is all the bigger I can stand. I can't. It's just bugging me. It's keeping me awake at night. Mow it, because as tall as it is, it's at least that deep rooted.
Wow.
Oh wow.
If not more.
Isn't there a certain time when you say the flower hits and
Usually,
the nitrogen?
if you're after nitrogen production per se,
That's what I'm at.
what you want to do is you want to start seeing the first seed pod, because usually they'll bloom for a while. They have a seed pod, especially the fava beans, which is this guy. We'll pull up the one good example here. They'll start to have flowers probably in a couple of weeks. They'll also be about twice as big, because now our days are getting longer and it's warmer and it's got enough water down there to grow, so it's going to take off and grow. The only thing you really want to do is you're going to increase how much horsepower it takes to chop it up if you let it get woody. So usually about the third flower or so, it's about as big as it's going to get, heavy as it's going to get, have as much nitrogen in that plant tissue. How much nitrogen you get out of it is a function of how much biomass you made. So the bigger it can get, the more you're going to have. But, yes sir.
So my concern is, like, by the time you harvest comes around for almonds, they need to be clean, the surface
Yeah.
smooth. So are you going to put herbicide or something to get rid of, clean it up? Or could this, say we get late rains, like May, April? How do you deal with that? Put a herbicide?
You can't herbicide it. Most of the time it's going to die. These guys right here probably won't come back over there, because when the plant comes up with 2 leaves of dicot, you knock the growing tip off, you basically killed it. So the small grain in there probably will regrow. Any common vetch or anything that's short and didn't get chopped off will probably grow back again. I would usually rule of thumb say you need to have killed it by about 2 days. Yeah.
But you,
After you don't want to disc this.
but you
because-
go in 2 times in the mower in the summertime, and
It's
no
not
water
gonna come
touching
back.
it. You're not going to get.
Yeah. That's the other thing is it's going to run out of moisture underneath of it.
That's why you got to have the right irrigation system for almonds, for example. You don't want the water coming.
Yeah, you don't want water all the way out here anyways.
Right.
The advantage we're going to get out of this thing is next year, the water that does land out here is not going to run to the sides and puddle up there. It's going to soak in.
You have to plant every year.
This type we would have to replant every year. So what happens a lot of times is we start out with something like this, and we refine what we want out of it. He mows all of it early, and none of this comes back. Then why pay for it? Maybe all he really needs is some triticale and some low-growing something else. A couple more years, and these trees close in. That's when you start going, okay, maybe I want to put in, right after harvest, when I go and plane back a little bit, I'll put my clover in, pray for rain, and not worry about it. The clover's in the same boat, basically. If you mowed it right now, it's so short the mower doesn't get it. You come back in a month and you mow it, you're clipping the tops off. It'll probably stool out and grow back a little bit from that because it's still got moisture. But it says, an annual plant says, I want to make seed. That's its whole thing. So it will try and bloom and make some seed. If you go out there and mow it the day everything's in full bloom, it's probably not going to receive, because at that time your soil moisture is starting to decline, and your plant says, hey, I was mature enough to flower. I ain't got enough oomph to come back and do it again. So probably we'll call this the 1st of February, because essentially it is. I'd leave it in here so you got something to drive on for bloom sprays. And then once bloom spray's done and it starts to leaf out, hit it with a mower, starts to grow back again, let it grow up a little bit bigger. The small grains, usually if you start to see seed heads push out and you mow it off close to the ground, you've killed that plant as well. It's back to that, I ain't got enough oomph to kill it. So there will be residue out here. But as thick as that is right there, you wouldn't hardly see any of it in August. So if you let it get bigger, yeah, you're going to have some stuff out there. It's not going to make a windrow of garbage that you have to pick up with the nuts. You may have, one mowing, the second mowing, you may have to slow down and chop it a little finer. But on the other hand, usually it doesn't require any more mowing than you would normally do.
The root system of a particular rootstock doesn't go where the cover crop is. Does it have any benefit then to get nitrogen?
I think we're looking at getting nitrogen and then not having standing water, not phytophthora, not all these root diseases that you see.
And the nitrogen out here does do a certain amount of thing because it feeds your soil biology, which is also going to help open the soil up and all that and increase your carbon content. I've kind of wondered about that for a long time as well, and do tell me that if it's there's some feeder roots out here that will get some of it, but you're not going to produce so much of it, and it's not in a form that's going to leach readily that you don't have to worry too much about it. What happens is your fertility starts to build up in this section, and your legumes, if you continue planting them, get lazier and lazier, and pretty soon they don't look like they're doing anything. And at that time, it's like, okay, well, either I don't need to cover crop for a couple of years, or I can just get away with putting in a small grain just to keep that nitrogen there and feed my tiny livestock. It's a cover crop is actually to feed the soil, and the soil is what feeds your trees. So if we can make this even the plant at 11 feet and it's only 7 wide, but on the other hand, that's 7 feet more soil that's got life in it than you had otherwise, which is kind of what I'm looking at. So it's every grower is going to be a little different as to when they're going to pull the trigger and want to mow it or terminate it.
Any other questions? Thoughts? Concerns?
No, if you have concerns, let us know. We can try and answer them.
Do you have like a little chart where it kind of makes it easy for the farmer to say, hey, for corn, you want to plant this cover crop, for almond this, for water this, because in this area...
You got a little bit of everything, yeah.
Yeah, we got mainly walnuts, corn, peaches, and almonds in this area, so it'll help a lot.
I was just a visual.
The thing is this will work under... The only one it may not work very well under would be like peaches. So I don't know why peach growers don't have cover crops. I've heard a couple of different rumors, okay, well, it harbors this, or I got to get out there for that type of thing. But I think, and a lot of it had to do with how much brush they have to shrub. So, but peaches would be something to look at as well. You can use this under pretty much all of them. The neat thing about this one is if you put it under walnuts, it'll make it up through leaf form. Walnuts is probably one of the tougher ones because of that massive leaf fall that happens the first rain in November. It all falls off the tree and it's that deep. Clovers don't work too well underneath that, so you gotta have something with some to come through. But we can, if you have a specific thing that you're trying to accomplish in a specific crop, we can usually dial that in and say, okay, yeah, look, that would work, but this might be better. So we're getting better at that. But we can do prescription cover cropping, or we can kind of do broad base. This works, this works, and this works. The company I work for, we do a lot of that prescription work. Other companies that you'll see having seed available do a lot more of. I've got a big pile of A, B, and C. B is probably your best bet. So it's up to you whether and we'll suggest, well, maybe you want to put this in there, and that changes the price versus what B is. If B doesn't have that thing and you want it, so then you either have to put it in yourself or figure something else out. Okay, who do we have up last? Oh, Smart was going to talk about some funding availability and some along that line.
All right, thank you to Brent and Tom. We'll give them a round of applause. So for more information regarding cover crop, so we'll just do like a breakout session at the end. You can speak to Brent and Tom a little bit. You can go a little bit more into depth if you're curious, or myself, Graveen, or Jazz as well. So the funding opportunities we have available coming up, the most recent one that we have going on is cow recycle. So reach out to Graveen regarding cow recycle for your farms. If you have illegal dumping going on in your ranches, just reach out to us. We can get a gate put in your ranch. We can get the trash picked up. I know along the river you see a lot of illegal dumping, a lot of cars being dumped and things like that. So reach out to us regarding that. And the Healthy Soils program is starting to wrap up a little bit, but if you are still interested, please reach out to me. We do cover crop and compost application, so reach out to me about that and any other upcoming programs we have available on our website. So reach out to us, get a business card. My email is on there, website's on there, everything's on there. And if you could please turn in your pre-surveys before you leave, and if you did a pre-survey, please do the post-survey on your way out. Other than that, thank you for coming, and stick around, have some food, and talk a little bit. We'll,
And I got 2 more commercials.
So, okay, I got 2 more commercials then, basically. The soil health thing through the CDFA will probably refund. That's cap and trade money, so there's a whole lot of it. It's got hoops to jump through like any other government program, but it does help. NRCS will also help to a certain amount with cover crop practices or other soil health practices. There's a program out there called Seeds for Bees, run by a nonprofit that is founded by beekeepers, and we do a lot of seed mixing for that as well. And their program opens usually in July and closes in October, and they will fund or give you a certain amount of seed for the first year, and the second year they'll fund a little bit more, and by the third year they're hoping you're buying it and have figured it out type of thing. But it is out there. There's some other grants as well floating around. Almond Board, I believe, will also be getting into the act a little bit on that, either helping you get government money or finding you other means of doing that. And then my last commercial is, I'll get the information to Samar so he makes sure he gets it to you guys. There's a cover crop trial tour happening in early March. They have 4 stops scheduled. It's going to be a bus tour type of thing. It's not free, but on the other hand, you'll see kind of a cross section of walnuts and open ground and various other things of different cover crop materials out there. And then they'll have a series of speakers at each stop type of thing. And they want you to sign up and all that fun stuff. So like I said, I'll make sure he has the information if you're interested in getting it. I think it's going to be a good opportunity. It's our first go round at it, so we'll see how well it works, and we'll go from there. Thank you again for coming out. Thank you for filling out your review and all that fun stuff. And like I said, we'll be here for a while. If you got questions or whatever, we'll try and answer them the best we can.
yeah, all right. Thank you guys. Thank you for coming out. So stick around. We'll just be here to talk to you guys. Please do those surveys. Turn them in if you can. And thank you for coming.